but my climbing Dorchester Heights twice that day put me back in the hospital. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the Fun Show here at Big TV. This is the June 4th edition of the Fun Show. Michael will give us a little musical interlude here. He's rushing the season into summer, which was all right a few days ago, but it seems to have gone back to early spring again on things. But it's New England weather. You can never be sure what it is. It's the beginning of hurricane season. I'm glad we don't broadcast in Puerto Rico because they wouldn't be happy to hear that.
No.
In any case, there's a theme to our show this evening, and the theme is brought on by the ridiculous action of the Brookline Town Meeting to vote to rename the Edward Devotion School. It wasn't bad enough that they decided to build the ugliest public building in the Western Hemisphere. Well, that's a nice zoom on Susan. Can we get a zoom over here? I think we have some new people in the control room, but in any case, if we don't manage this sign is the theme. It says, teach history, don't erase history. There we go. Teach history, don't erase history.
Don't like nothing.
It shouldn't be shocking and surprising to anyone in the United States that a number of the founding fathers owned human beings, participated in slavery, either as owners or as traders or as shippers. What's shocking and surprising is that it comes as news to people.
Yeah.
And if we had been teaching American history to people in a proper and appropriate way, they would already know that, and they would have dealt with it, and they would have discussed it, and they would have used it as a teachable moment. But no, the politically correct want to erase history. Forget the fact that Edward Devotion owned one slave. Forget the fact that Edward Devotion's family donated the property on which the Devotion School sits. Forget the fact that the Devotion School was named in 1893 and it was good enough for John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Mike Wallace and Barbara Walters and thousands of Devotion alums who have gone through. It was good enough for Charles Taylor. It was good enough for Jerry Kaplan. It was good enough for Michael Sallin. No. Got to change it to a nice distinguished thing called the Coolidge Corner School. Now they're going to come up with a committee to pick a new name. And I suggest that given that it's the ugliest school building in the Western Hemisphere, that anyone with eyes would be embarrassed and ashamed to have it named after them. And so, other than PS1, I suggest the only appropriate thing is to name it after the abominable architect who designed it, so that for the rest of his life he could never escape the ignominy of having designed the Devotion School. But while we're at it...
Are they going to tear down Devotion's house?
I don't know. That's probably next. Who knows? Although they have built the school around it again, as it has always been. But while we're at it, if we want to keep the reputation as the most politically correct of all political correct blue towns in America, here's a few things that you get your naming committee to work on, because there's a few streets in Brookline that need to be renamed.
Take notes.
Cabot Street, Gardner Road, Sewell Avenue, Aspinwald Avenue, Boylston Street, Crafts Road, Davis Avenue, Gardner Road, Heath Street, and of course the Heath School, since it was named after Heath Street, and Heath Street was named after a slave trader. Sewell Avenue. Henry Sewell was the largest slave owner in Brookline and operated a fleet of slave ships. He was almost up there with the Browns of Providence. White Place, Winchester Street, and let us not forget the necessity of renaming Washington Street. So come on, folks. Teach history. Don't erase history.
Don't erase it.
And I'm glad to say that my friends on this panel agree with me.
And I think it's marvelous. I hope they took notes.
Yes,
I
well,
wish this was in a tab, too.
hopefully we will find this. We will find this circulated. I had another suggestion, though, since naming people after historical figures, you never know when the historical figures will turn out to have feet of clay. And so perhaps to avoid this confusion in the future, all the PTO presidents can pick numbers out of a hat, and our schools can become PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4.
Like New York City.
It works for New York City.
Yeah.
Why can't it work for us? And we will never find out that PS1 was a slaveholder. There's an interesting side note in this. The Lawrence School was named for Amos Adams Lawrence, who lived from 1814 to 1886. And he was one of the most, I choose the word virulent, enthusiastic abolitionists in the area. And the reason that I say that is that this is the gentleman who supplied the arms to John Brown
I'd say
for his Harper's Ferry raid. So that sort of balances the scales. Half of the other schools in Brookline are named for former school committee members, and I guess we shouldn't be surprised by that, right? Do you remember Charles Taylor?
yes.
Charles Taylor was the principal of Devotion School for over 40 years.
Right.
Wow.
For over 40 years. So, and we used to have a lovely bas relief of Charles Taylor there in the entryway of the school.
Yeah.
Well, that part of the building no longer exists.
True.
I'm now curious as to whether they tore the monument to Charles Taylor down.
Probably.
Well, when they open it to the public, I'm going to go look and see whether
They replaced it.
in their destroying history they decided to tear out the monument to Charles Taylor. If we in fact do have to have a new school for the Devotion School, it seems to me that the most appropriate choice would be the Charles Taylor School.
I'd agree with that.
So,
What say you? Yes. Okay.
so what else is new?
First of all, I want to, on behalf of the huge crowd that's here, I want to thank you for all the research that you, lots of time
Yes.
and effort on the research. I want to thank you for that. I hope the people out there do too.
Now you're a former principal, headmaster, teacher. You're a former teacher.
Yeah.
I found it curious that I went to the websites of each of our schools, and there is not one mention, not on any one of them, not one word mentioning who they were named after. And then I started calling the principal's offices and saying, what can you tell me about William H. Lincoln? What can you tell me about Charles Driscoll? Well, nothing, actually. I don't know anything. So it's interesting we have this huge hubbub about what a school is named after, and yet apparently no school in Brookline knows anything about the person they were named after.
Sad.
Now, I called the superintendent's office. They knew very little about it. But, I mean, would you find it unusual that you'd have if your school was named something? I mean, if your school was named the Martin Luther King School,
Yeah.
don't you think on your website you'd have at least one short paragraph about Martin Luther King on it?
Well, I have to say this, and there's not a lot that to me, the Boston Public Schools do well. But when the city was turned 350, they came out with a little book called
Yeah.
What's in a Name? And it listed all of the schools that they had at the time and
A brief bio?
And a brief bio. So I know who David A. Ellis was.
Oh,
He
good.
was a rabbinical theologian that
Yeah.
was on the school committee.
Well, I think that's great, and I think somebody in Brookline ought to do that. You
Yeah.
know, and things. I did notice that on one.
And that was before they had websites and all this stuff. Now, I don't know if the school has one. or not.
On one of the sites I got to on the internet doing this research, I discovered they'd already taken devotion off the list of Brookline schools, which is pretty quick, I must say. But it would be interesting to know
Yes.
these things. I mean, You say he was a rabbinical
Theologian who served on the school committee.
That's cool because the Pierce School down the street here
Yes.
was named after the Reverend John Pierce, who was the minister of the Unitarian Church of Brookline.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Okay.
and he lived from 1773 to 1849. And his wife, again, was a very active abolitionist. And there's an interesting thing about the Pierce one because in the family plot, there is a young man by the name of Matthew with no last name.
And no dates of birth?
No. No last name, buried in the family plot, and he's listed as servant.
Oh, okay. So they do have something.
He's
Okay.
listed as servant, and but his no last name
Oh, because they did.
indicates to me that perhaps some more research needs to be done. On the other hand, since his wife was an abolitionist, maybe he was a
Free.
freed slave
gonna
they
say,
took
they
in
took
to,
in, yeah.
to live. I can't say that he was a slave there, but I do say that.
Oh, he had been like you said, he was freed,
Right,
and they took
right.
him in.
But I must say that under the current
Yeah.
frenzy in the town, it becomes an interesting
Wow.
question. You know, who was Matthew, and what was his status?
Let me ask you another question.
Alrighty.
It's not a good segue, but
Why not?
When do we do good segues?
is the president
Why
above
is that a precedent?
is the president above the law?
You see your pen?
Where's your mic? Is it there?
Right there.
Okay.
Is the president above the law? That's my question.
Is the well, yes, that's an interesting question because the president's over the weekend. The president's lawyer, the eminent Rudy
Rudy
Giuliani,
Giuliani, yes.
who was bat crazy in the election period and
Oh,
is
boy.
still bat crazy. He announced that tyranny had officially come to the United States because he announced that the president is totally within his rights and cannot be prosecuted for shooting the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He said if he'd shot Comey instead of fired him, he still couldn't be prosecuted. I mean, this is so ridiculous. I mean, these are the powers of the people that he admires. Putin, you know, Duarte, you know, these
Well,
kind of
one
people.
adulterer admires another.
Yeah, that's
You know, this is an announcement that we are now officially a fascist state,
Yeah.
in the opinion of Rudy Giuliani. The president can murder someone and
you go.
he's immune to the law. Thank you, Rudy.
Rudy Gotti, isn't that his name?
Rudy Gotti.
Gotti.
They had. I listened to one of these.
Now, don't show prejudice against New York Italians.
Sorry.
One of these attorneys who's, they have a lot of bright people on some of these news shows. And with this guy, he says he can say what he wants, but about being above the law. But there's 9 people sitting in a courthouse here in Washington, D.C. that are going to decide that, not him.
Yeah. By the time they get the case, however, it'll probably be called Capital City, D.C.
Well, you may have something there.
Particularly if they manage to convince people to rename Faneuil Hall, which has only been Faneuil Hall for like 260 years. Because after they get that, they're clearly going to go to dynamite the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial. But the thing is, it depends. It all depends on the health of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I'm glad to know that she has a very active physical exercise regimen.
Yes, very
'Cause,
good.
Ruth, we need you to stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Because
I know.
if Donnie John, the current occupant, gets another appointee to the Supreme Court, then Giuliani's probably right. At that point, he can murder whoever he wants,
right.
whenever he wants.
I
and
wouldn't put it past him.
He'll be fine.
Well, then we can ask to collude or not to collude.
That is the question, whether it is nobler in the press to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous reporters or bear arms against the media.
So that's what we're
Fake
waiting
news,
to find
fake
out.
news.
Did the Russians intervene in the election in 2016 and turn it over to President Trump now?
To quote Donald Trump, that's what everybody's saying. Like he said, you know, are you going to get the Nobel Prize? Well, everybody's saying it, but I'm not. You know? Well, Donnie, everybody's saying you colluded.
Okay,
There's no collusion, no collusion.
okay.
Which is just sort of ridiculous. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, after my long tirade on the Teach History, Don't Erase History,
That's good. That was a good tirade.
it is now time for the BAT, not BAT, the Big TV, sorry, BAT.
BAT is nice. I
the-
like BAT.
The Big TV Unrehearsed Thespian Society.
Is it bigger than the BAT? No, it isn't. Okay.
Which comes from the middle level of the vault, in spite of the fact that it has not a single dated reference in it.
Yeah,
So,
sure it does.
so
No reference.
no reference.
It's
There's
dated,
hardly,
but there's no
there's
reference.
hardly a dated reference in here. It's,
Oh.
it's timeless, like
Yes.
Shakespeare at his
Well,
best.
that's all right. I won't argue that. I haven't won any arguments
If
with
I'm
you
gonna,
tonight.
if I'm going
Okay.
to call you Shakespeare, you won't argue
That's
with me.
right.
No.
But it is okay. It is entitled Identity Theft, and it hits very close to home for Susan.
That's
tonight.
right.
And for my Rini
Action.
too.
Lost my wallet.
Terrible.
Where?
Not sure.
Left it on a store counter.
Probably paying a bill with a credit card.
Possible.
Did you check?
It'll turn up.
What faith?
Lose much?
Some money, license, personal stuff.
You're going to be robbed.
Might be happening right now.
So suspicious.
Well, if you don't care, it's fine, I guess.
I'm already replacing everything.
Good.
But I did get a phone call from my bank.
Oh, yeah? Let me think. Unexplained large withdrawal, right?
Right.
It's begun.
You're already too late.
It's becoming all too common.
You got to check all those transactions fast.
You know, I don't really care.
But it's theft.
If the guy needs the money that badly,
What? Let him have it?
It could become a lot more serious, my dear.
it's gonna be fine.
He'll find out about everything.
He'll be buying stuff on eBay in your name.
Buy a car, even a condo.
You, as a person, will gradually disappear.
Could we change the subject, please?
He'll get into your strong box.
He'll even use your name to make intimate relationships online.
Cut it out.
And if he injures himself in a fall,
But I didn't.
The other one did.
you still get the bills.
The phone calls begin.
But you can't answer them because you're on a cruise ship in the South Pacific.
Hilarious. I don't have a cell phone.
How do you know?
You're not even here.
Who are you talking to?
Someone, but it might not be you.
Who would I be?
Well, if you don't know, I'd call the thief
Maybe we could invite him
or
over.
take him out to dinner.
Probably hard to reach.
No, yeah, he's out shopping all the time.
Well, with Susan's cards and documents.
Sounds like you made Silas very happy.
And wealthy.
That's not me.
Affluent, anyway.
Silas will spend a lot more than you've got.
You people are serious?
Silas needs a whole new wardrobe.
And a new gold and bejeweled watch.
He's got a very generous friend.
None of this will take place.
It's going on while we're sitting here.
Nobody would stoop to that.
It's all about credit, cards, and money. Yours.
He'll stop.
When he's arrested.
Not Silas. He's too clever for that.
Who's this Silas?
Your new alter ego.
Silas will listen to reason.
Yeah, why don't you have a heart-to-heart with him?
You don't get it.
What's Silas's last name?
I don't know. What's on your mind?
What if everybody started doing the same thing?
Startling notion that it begins with Silas.
Silas Wiener Schnitzel.
You're joking.
Silas Dimitri Wiener Schnitzel.
Very imaginative.
Yeah, I met him last Thursday.
Nice eyes.
Did you tell him about my predicament?
You mean you misplaced it way back then?
It was in that coffee shop, huh?
Yeah, remember I had that strong tea?
How was it?
I was eating half of Silas's ham on Swiss sandwich.
You know, I never eat cheese.
Well, Silas has changed that.
Son of a gun has a huge appetite.
Ate 3 desserts,
I detest sweets.
No, your persona is being totally transformed.
and it's unusual.
It's even incredible.
What's this all about?
Who was this man before us?
I don't know. Some stranger we haven't met before.
That's inappropriate.
No, I'd say it's infuriating.
Do you think, Joe, under the circumstances?
Do you think she'll end up in debtor's prison?
Silas?
No, Kyle.
No,
I mean
Susan.
Susan.
Absurd and not amusing.
Oh, well, you could take up the saxophone.
Perhaps Silas would send him one.
You're making it complex.
Well, bankruptcy can be like that.
Do you think we're getting through?
We need to put her in a dentist's chair.
Not me.
Novocaine and then the drill?
Okay, I'm paying attention now.
No, you had your chance.
Now suffer with all the other victims.
But I didn't do anything wrong.
You were careless.
Steps had to be taken.
You can't just put on a CD and disco away.
I don't disco. Waltz, perhaps.
Where did we go wrong?
Enough.
Wait a minute. Here, we found it. Here's your wallet.
Blackout. All right.
Okay.
Identity theft
Identity theft
from the old days.
from the old days. Okay.
Oops.
Anyway, we had a curious. Susan needs your battery.
Yes.
Oh, she's keeps losing the
So the
battery.
Democratic State Convention took place.
Yeah.
I guess Friday. I don't know if it was Friday and Saturday or
Yeah,
just
I'm trying to think,
Friday.
where did that- oh, well, okay.
And curiously enough, the people who chose to go to this convention, most of the things went pretty much as planned. Jay Gonzalez and
Yeah, okay.
and whoever. The guy best remembered is not Jimmy Tingle, and then they turned around, these maverick delegates, and they gave, by about 54%, they gave the convention nomination to some guy named Zakem
Yeah.
to run against Bill Galvin.
Begins with a Z.
Zakem, yes.
Yes.
And I am told, I'm not sure, I didn't do the research on this, but I'm told that he is the son of Lenny Zakem.
Well, it's possible.
And I am told, and I find this hard to believe as well, that he's a Boston city councilor. Susan lives in Boston.
I never heard of it.
She's never heard of him. I've never seen his name in any news report. Apparently, if he is a Boston city councilor, he's yet to do anything that was worthy of making the news. I hate to say this because Lenny Zakem was a very good friend of mine. I mean, he's a very, very memorable
Yeah.
hero of
Right.
Massachusetts and one thing and another. But
Didn't he
Bill
ban?
Galvin is the best statewide official, or over the period of over the long
What, 30
run,
years or something? I don't
the
know.
best statewide official we've had in this state in 30 years.
Yeah.
I have to clarify that because I'm that fond of Mara Healy.
We like him.
But
Good man.
This was so ridiculous. But on the other hand, as I said to Mara Healy one
Yeah.
cycle ago when she failed to get the convention nomination, I said the curious thing in Massachusetts Democratic politics is it's often best not to get the convention nomination.
Right. Now you're talking.
You go out, you win the primary, you win the office, and you're set. Frankly, about half the people that have gotten the nomination have ended up losing, not getting elected one way or another. Either they lose the primary or they lose the general election because, the convention does things like nominate Martha Coakley.
I'm gonna give you some explosive news.
All right, explosive news.
The
Should
New
I
Hampshire
duck?
government agencies agreed that the charges of voter fraud in 2016
Oh, you
those
mean
they were-
Trump saying millions of people voted illegally?
Yes, buses came across from Boston and Massachusetts and voted against.
Oh, in New Hampshire?
Yeah. New Hampshire, they decided finally that the whole thing is a farce and they gave up on it.
It's like everything else Donald Trump says. It's a lie.
Sounds about right,
The
you know.
rule of thumb that I should make another sign that says, if his mouth or his thumbs are moving, he's lying.
Okay, all
Breathing
right.
oxygen. He's lying.
He's gathering energy to get up and lie. You know?
I got down here. This is a good report, something
Oh,
worthwhile.
incidentally, congratulations to the graduates of Brookline High School.
was that yesterday?
Congratulations.
That
Here,
was
here.
this weekend.
Oh,
Here, here. Okay. Most women, now this is a good one, this isn't funny, with common types of early stage breast cancer can skip chemotherapy after surgery.
Right. They have new tests, a new study, millions of people.
right. But it has to do with the OncoTest score.
Okay.
Okay.
And if your OncoTest is between, let's say, 18 and 25, then you have to have chemo. That's what mine
Yeah.
was.
But what it means is that a large percentage of women with a breast cancer diagnosis now don't have to go through
Yeah.
chemotherapy because it's determined that if the score is in certain ranges,
Yeah.
it does you no good. You don't have to suffer through it. You don't have to fight that as well as fighting.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful advantage.
And if it's not in
Good
any,
stuff.
and if they don't find it in any lymph nodes.
Anybody who doesn't have to take, anybody who needs chemotherapy, it's a blessing. Anybody who can avoid it is in good shape. Hit the keyboard, my friend.
Why? We got 4 minutes.
No, we got
Oh,
a
we have
couple
got
of
4
minutes.
minutes.
We got a couple of minutes,
Yes,
haven't we?
No, I was going to ask you something. But I forgot.
Go ahead.
So,
We're going to bring something up.
so yes,
Yeah.
we did miss Harvard commencement this year.
Yeah, we did.
It
All
was,
right. Okay. You want
It was hard. It was interesting that the Radcliffe Medal was given to Hillary Clinton, even though she's a Wellesley girl.
I was going to say.
But
Why do you tell everybody these secrets?
she was
Well, it's not a secret,
but she
you
was
do.
presented by Mara Healy. Who
I
is a
know.
Harvard
I know.
graduate,
Mara.
so-
Mara's
so
good.
it
Okay.
was my sister's 60th reunion. And
Ah.
she actually had a very good time on things. Class of 1958.
God bless her.
But it was the first time in, 30 years that I've missed a commencement.
So
And,
did I. It's the first time in a
And,
long time.
So, anyway,
I
my
missed it.
friends, both of them, said, well, commencement wasn't going to be the same without you, you know. So.
Do you think that the president will even get close to the that big prize? Was it in Sweden?
Oh, the Nobel
Yeah.
Prize.
I don't want to bring it up, but I didn't say. I didn't say it.
Nobel
You
Prize in
said it.
stupidity.
What did you think of that? Do you think he'll get? Well, we don't know
They
if he's.
can't be that stupid.
Well, it's so ridiculous because the Nobel Committee was actually running an investigation as how someone managed to inappropriately slip his name
Yeah.
into this year's nominations. They were offended by the claim. The chances of Donald John Trump ever winning a Nobel Prize in anything are nil.
Well,
Nil.
Okay.
And now we're on the verge of his ambassador to Germany
yes.
insulting and upsetting the Germans and the EU so much that my nephew in Germany advises me that Germany is on the verge of expelling him from Germany.
Wow.
Go Germany.
What did he do?
Oh, he announced that he was going to do everything in his power to elect conservatives, you know, like Penn and et
Okay.
cetera,
All right. That's
to
all.
things. In other words, he
Yeah,
came
all
in
right.
as an ambassador and announced he had every intention of interfering in the internal affairs of his host countries and
This man's an idiot.
and a number of other things. And so, rather than accept this, they're apparently thinking of expelling him from the country.
Good night.
Night, Irene.
Good night,
Irene. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. We'll see you in our dreams. Good night, Irene. Good night, everybody, from the Fun Show here at Big TV. We're glad to have the entire cast back together.
And history counts.
And history counts, and history is history, and history is the best example of the oft-repeated phrase, teaching moments,
That's
and we need to teach, not erase.
right.
Hear, hear.
Here, here.